Imagine wiping out 5 entire government agencies from the map in Washington. That's what GOP presidential candidate Ron Paul wants to do as part of his $1 trillion spending cut plan. He says it will get America's economy booming again. Okay, will it? Jonathan Hoenig, will it?
Cheryl, it will. I mean, government spent $3.8 trillion last year. We don't need a little tweak. We need a slash and burn, and Representative Paul's program does just that. We've come to think of this bloated government as something normal, but it's really not. Housing and urban development was a product of the 1960s. The Energy Department, which he wants to get rid of, was a product of the 1970s. We should slash and burn, return to the Constitution, put this country back on the course for economic prosperity.
But you know what, Wayne? Here's what he wants to cut. HUD, the Energy Department, Commerce, Interior, Education. Do we need to just cut those agencies? Is that the right answer?
Well, I'm amused by Jonathan's ideological approach, but the practical side of that, those 5 agencies employ 235,000 people. They have a budget of $175 billion among them all. It's unrealistic to think that Congress is going to take away their own access to the lobby money by destroying those agencies. They're just not going to do it. Can you cut them down? Yes. That would be a much more logical and a realistic plan if you could do that.
But, Regina, there is more. He also has suggested repealing Obamacare, getting rid of Dodd-Frank, getting rid of Starbucks. I mean, all of these things he wants to just completely get rid of and basically get the government out of business. Another plan here?
Actually, want to do a lot more because this is an 11-page document that his plan is. So it's not just eliminating those 5 agencies. It also substantially reduces funding for free school programs for impoverished kids. It substantially reduces funding for food stamps. And it wholeheartedly eliminates the community policing program, which was put in place in the 1990s, which led to a substantial decrease in crime nationwide. So you look at these, what programs he's looking to cut here, and they're going to be cutting low to middle income. And while he's doing this, he's also saying he wants to extend the Bush tax cuts. He wants to repeal all taxes on investment income and on estates. And like you said, he wants to repeal wholeheartedly without even looking at the merits of some of the issues related to Dodd-Frank and Sarbanes-Oxley. And those two laws were put into place because of these bad actors on Wall Street.
Right. There really are no merits to Sarbanes-Oxley or Dodd-Frank at this point. We can't find any. Look, the bottom line is you can cut as much as you want, but you question where the money goes when you cut it. When they have that money back in their hands again, what the heck are they going to do with it? It's certainly not coming back to you or I. So the problem is they don't know how to spend our money properly. Look, no one even knows what the Department of Interior does. For all we know, they decorate. But at the end of the day, these agencies are out there, and Wayne is right. They are not going to cut their own, and even if they do, they're going to keep the money themselves and do something stupid with it.
Well, John Layfield, I don't know about that, but I've heard you've said this to me over and over on the show, John, that we need an energy plan. The country needs an energy plan. Ron Paul just wants to get rid of the Energy Department. What do you say to that?
I would not get rid of the Energy Department, but look, when you have the average federal employee making $126,000 in Washington, D.C., those guys are not putting out fires and teaching kids. Those are bloated part of desk jobs that are overpaid right now and redundant in Washington, D.C. But when you take $1 trillion out of this economy, look what happened in the UK when David Cameron did that with his new government. That will probably push us into some type of recession. However, our choices are not good. We can either take the short-term pain or we can be Greece in 10 years. We've got to do this. But as far as stimulating growth, you take $1 trillion out, that's going to hurt.
Jonathan?
Yeah, and Cheryl, what I think is missed is that the very presence of the programs is actually destructive to the economy. The Department of Energy, for example, hurts exploration in this country. The Health Department, of course, has created the health mess. The Education Department, et cetera, et cetera. The federal government spends tremendous amounts of money in inhibiting freedom. We need to free the economy, get rid of these departments, and actually let prosperity grow.
But Wayne, so I'm going to go back to what Wayne said, because Wayne, you've got more of a balanced approach. You're saying there can be cuts that can be made. $1 trillion in cuts, would that hurt the economy, do you think, or help the economy?
No, not at all. In other words, there's a lot of waste. We all know that. There's a lot of waste in government. If you could skinny this thing down, you're saying, as I said, 235,000 employees in these agencies and $175 billion in the budgets. You can churn that, probably cut that in half if you just said, look, everybody, you got to take half of that and take it off the board. And John Layfield was right when he's saying that the salaries now in Washington, do you know that Washington is the biggest employer as an area, and the most expensive employer in the United States, not the private sector. We have delivered the private sector into the hands of the government, and we've allowed them to do this. This is crazy.
And Regina, Washington is now the second biggest contributor to U.S. GDP. So it is about the economy. If you talk about cutting these departments, it would be a huge hit to GDP overall.
And it's also going to affect employees nationwide. You're just looking at the salaries of the administrators sitting behind desks in Washington. But when you cut the Department of Interior, which doesn't have to do with interior design, it actually has to do with national parks, and it controls oil drilling and federal parks as well. You've got park rangers and you've got people operating that don't make that $100,000.
But just because,
and if you no.
But just because
Interior, if you cut out the Department of Interior, you have to get rid of the federal parks, and you're going to be auctioning them off to oil drilling and gas.
How about you let it go to the state level? How about you let the states take care of things?
The states cannot afford.
Well, you know what? We can't afford it at the federal level anymore. We cannot afford this anymore. And just because somebody's employed doesn't mean they should keep their job. If it's a useless job, it's a useless job.
It's about time we call a state around here. Federal parks and deal with oil drilling is not. And quite frankly, we need people to monitor. Look at what happened with BP on the offshore drilling.
Okay. You don't need the federal government.
Wait a minute,
Jonathan, go ahead, John Layfield.
We keep talking about we either got to decide between grizzly bears or oil drilling. That's how you boil an argument down to emotion, and that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with really tough choices here. We're dealing with cutting $1 trillion out of the deficit, which we have to do. If we don't, we have $20 trillion in debt in 10 years. That is unsustainable. We're Greece at that point. We either got to take one on the chin right now, or we got to get knocked out in 10 years.
Last word, Jonathan.
Yeah, and what Representative Paul is proposing sounds so revolutionary. I guess if you consider the American Revolution to be that revolutionary. He's talking about following the Constitution. That's a great place to start for all of our political discourse.
And cutting out funding for poor kids. That's a great way to
go, guys. Okay, all right.
There go poor kids again.
Jonathan's last word.
It's all
Coming up.